Good afternoon, everybody. It's really great to see you all. Thank you for joining. I'm Jonathan Spalter, CEO at USTelecom. And whether you're here in this room, and thank you to our colleagues at AT&T for allowing us to use their facilities here. It's fantastic. Or whether you're watching us through C-SPAN or via our broadband networks. We say hello to many of you who are watching us across the country. We really want to welcome you this afternoon. I think you all saw, it was pretty remarkable just 4 days ago, Americans in Artemis splashed down traveling from Earth around the moon. It was really an amazing, spectacular moment about American resiliency, American investment, American drive. And I would say that those characteristics are equally reflected in our own broadband sector. The work that you do around this nation as connectors is formidable. If you think about it, over the last 30 years, $2.2 trillion has been invested by our collective broadband sector in America's network infrastructure. Just to put that a little bit in perspective, if you add up what it took to put a man on the moon, to build the internet highway system, to put a man on the moon, and then to sling 4 Americans around it, and then double that, that is the equivalent of where we are here. It's the steadiness and resiliency of our commitment via investment in this nation's infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, is incredible. We have the will, the resources, and the know-how to do this work. What we also are seeking as well are committed partners in government to clear the way. More green lights and less red tape. And that's exactly what our first guest has been serially and spectacularly delivering at the FCC, including and notably with a unanimous decision just recently to embrace policies to modernize America's broadband networks. A move that my kids might call low-key fire, which Mr. Chairman, I assure you, I think is a compliment. But every commissioner, if you think about it from their unique vantage points, looked at the facts about network modernization and chose the same direction, which is forward. Now we're taking the momentum to the states. Already, happily, more than 24 states have advanced legislation or executive administrative orders to advance their own modern rules with respect to moving forward to next generation networks. And we here at USTelecom have launched America's Connected Future campaign. Add .org to that and you can find it online, about helping to clear the path to ensure all states and all communities can similarly move forward with their own abilities to actually deliver the best, most modern networks to American communities. So let's talk today at our Connectivity Forum about how we can keep up that momentum, starting with our first guest. Please join me in welcoming FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, good to see you.
Okay, I think we should start with some pictures. Do we have them?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll see, I don't know if you can see, it's right there. You just got back 2,000 miles away. You were at the U.S.-Mexico border. You recently spent time with Rusty Moore. Rusty, are you here?
Yeah.
Great. From BBT and his team down in Big Bend along the Rio Grande. You know, some people in our business talk about last mile. I think down there you have to talk about the last 100 miles
Yeah.
to do that connectivity. I also saw, if you look at the next picture, that you were there learning how to splice fiber, which was great. So first of all, what wisdom did you bring back, Chairman, from your time in those rural service areas in West Texas, but also, and more importantly, what's harder, splicing fiber or being chair of the FCC?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. Jonathan, you and your team, Nirali, and everyone does such a phenomenal job representing your members and advocating here in D.C., so it's great to spend time with you. I mean, look, President Trump has been very clear that he wants to unleash America's builders, and we are seeing and going to see record-setting internet builds all across the country. And for me, I think there's no better way to do a job in Washington, D.C. than to spend as little time inside the Beltway as possible. And so you get outside and got to spend time, with Rusty and his whole team, and his crew was out there, Hayden, Dagan, and they were, running a rock saw, bringing high-speed fiber all across West Texas, which is going to help unlock new energy infrastructure builds as well to power all that new development that's going on. And it really changed your perspective when you get to cut out the layers of lawyers and lobbyists in D.C. and speak directly with the crews that are actually building, and you can talk to them, what's slowing you down, what's holding you up, and you get ideas that we can then take back to D.C. and act on. But it was a lot of fun to spend time with them. We've got to run the rock saw for a little bit, got to splice fiber. And I do think splicing fiber is a lot more difficult at the end of the day than this job. Less stressful, but more technically complex.
You have to thread the needle on both jobs.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. That's right.
Another big thank you from all of us in our industry and the communities that we serve for the success that you have put your shoulder to advancing, which is the network modernization order.
Yeah.
And that's been just an important signal, I think even historic move forward. We're all very grateful. But an important part of the broader IP transition strategy also includes modernizing voice interconnection rules. And I know I'm going right down into the weeds, but sometimes the hard work is done in those weeds.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how the FCC is thinking about this next step in that transition away from the legacy network interconnection rules?
Yeah, if you step back, most people don't understand it, but people here do, obviously. But we at the federal level have had rules and regulations on the books for decades that have prevented providers that want to upgrade communities to new modern networks, high-speed fiber networks. We've actually had rules and regulations on the books that have effectively stopped providers from doing that, and instead has forced them to continue to maintain old copper networks. In some cases, when copper is stolen or washed away in a storm, to replace the old copper lines. And we're at a point in which, from a workforce perspective, having the people that know how to architect these copper lines, we're running out of folks that know how to do that. And by simply allowing providers to retire copper line networks and upgrade communities with high-speed networks instead, we are saving something in the order of magnitude of billions of dollars a year. One provider alone, I think, says that they spend $3 billion every single year maintaining aging copper for a dwindling portion of their customer base that's still on copper. So taking that step, we're going to allow people to finally retire copper, get high-speed networks out there. It's going to save billions of dollars. That's going to get reinvested in the networks. And so it's a step in the right direction. To your point, there are some complicated issues, obviously, that are part of that. One of them, as you noted, deals with interconnection. And we are going to start a process, not only of the regulatory process we're already looking at, but we're going to open up a series of workshops at the FCC to bring together all of the affected stakeholders, ILECs, CLECs, associations, any other groups as well, to make sure that we can work through, and if there's corner cases, we'll deal with it. We understand we've got to be sensitive around the edges, but directionally, we have to complete this transition. We need to be mindful of the edge cases, and we will do that, but we have to get going on this.
Right, and I think you'd also agree, because you've been a long proponent of another issue that we have to get going on, which is the broad area of permitting reform. It is going to unlock so much of the agenda that you've been signally advancing, which is Build America. I'd just love to get your thoughts on what, if you can share them, on what your thoughts are on advancing permitting reform rulemaking, and we give you permission to do so.
Well, I mean, look, historically, it just costs too much and it takes too long to build infrastructure in this country, and the internet infrastructure is no exception to that as a general rule. We are running an agenda at the FCC. It's called the Build America agenda, and it's to make sure that we can get dirt turning again. And there's a lot of features of that. One is we're engaging in updating our approach to environmental regulations, NEPA. So Congress has stepped in recently with new legislation. The Supreme Court has provided additional guidance, and we are pushing hard to make sure that the NEPA environmental regulations aren't needlessly holding back internet builds. We're going to make a lot of progress there. We're also looking at state and local regulations where you can have cases where cities are charging exorbitant fees, which either means bills aren't going to take place, or if they do, then providers are just going to tack those fees onto the bill that consumers have to pay. We also have localities where it just takes too long, so we're looking at shot clocks there. So making sure that there's cost-based fees, making sure there's shot clocks on actions. And also we continue to need to work on federal lands. Not an issue that the FCC necessarily directly regulates, but the further west you go, a higher percentage of the area you're building on is owned by the federal government. And not surprisingly, it can take too long to get the permits there. So there's been some efforts over the years on that. But we're moving across the board from environmental. We're going to look at historic rules as well, and then just general permitting reform. And we're going to work hard to get this thing turned around.
Our innovation economy depends on it, and so does our AI future as well as our connected future. So thank you for that work. Yeah. I'm also glad that we saw a week ago today that the Council on Environmental Quality actually issued new guidance to provide categorical exclusions, including for broadband, to accelerate ability for us to build on federal lands and other places that are supported by government programs.
We're at such an interesting moment right now. With President Trump, the message he tells me, the message I'm sure he tells every other agency head is to go big. The most important thing you have in government is time. And I started at the FCC all the way in 2012. I've served in lots of different roles, and from general counsel to commissioner of the minority to commissioner of the majority. And you watch chairs when they leave the agency, and at the end of the day, they tend to wish they had another 6 months to get another one or two things done. And we've tried to sort of front load that this time around is to bring that mindset to bear right away. And so we have an opportunity here to be aggressive across the board, and you're seeing that. I mean, what Lee Zeldin is doing at EPA is phenomenal. What Ferguson is doing at FTC is great work. Commerce Department, Lutnick, his team, Ariel Roth at NTIA. I think everyone understands President Trump's vision is to go bold, be aggressive, and we're trying to do that across the board.
One of the areas you've also leaned in on, and I think it's been a real hallmark for your chairmanship, has been strengthening the framework for digital trust in our country, particularly around efforts to join hand in glove with we in industry to really take the fight to robocalls and scams.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give us a little bit of a top-up on what your planning is on that work? We talked about it last time you were here. I'd love to get an update.
Yeah, robocalls are a tremendous problem. They have been for a very long time, and I know industry is working on it. From the FCC's perspective, our team have been working hard across the years, although I'll say this, that leadership at the FCC has tended to take an approach where they've focused on one or two bad actors that legitimately are generating lots of illegal robocall traffic, and they issue headline-grabbing $100 million plus fines. Now, the follow-through has been difficult. The FCC doesn't always go to court to enforce its rules. You oftentimes have to go to DOJ to do it. So we've had these headline-grabbing fines, but it doesn't feel like we're making fundamental progress. So when we've come in this time, we have fundamentally changed how we're approaching illegal robocalls, and we are attacking the problem now at every single portion of the life cycle of a call. So for instance, we're making it more difficult for people to get access to phone numbers in the first place. We're taking a look at the secondary market for phone numbers and making sure that we have some new regulations there as well. We have a robocall mitigation database now that multiple administrations have worked to stand up, and you effectively cannot be delivering traffic in the U.S. if you're not in the robocall mitigation database. And we've taken new measures to kick out, I think, over 1,200 providers from the robocall mitigation database that we didn't think were doing enough to combat it. We have know your customer rules. So before you as a carrier can sign up a business to allow them to make calls, we have new regulations in place to make sure you really know who they are. And we're also looking increasingly at a portion of this where we say know your upstream provider. So if you're a telecom provider and you're interconnecting with another telecom provider, you have to know enough about them so that if there's an issue, we can trace it. So we are really trying to porcupine the entire system to deal with illegal robocalls, and you're going to continue to see action from us on all of those fronts.
And we're going to continue to do whatever we can through our industry traceback group to partner with you and your team at the FCC to advance that shared mission. It's a very important one, and we're really glad to see you standing up on that issue. Speaking of calls, another issue that you've been advancing was a recent proposal on new customer call center requirements. our industry, our companies are laser focused on customer experience, the quality of customer service, and take that very seriously. Give us a sense of what your thinking is around that.
Look, I think the customer service call experience for a lot of Americans has become frustrating in recent years. I think you have a complicated problem or really any problem and you call the business that you're working with and you end up connecting with a call center, somewhere outside of the country. It can be communications barriers. It can be difficult getting your problem resolved quickly. But there's also an issue of security. So what we've seen over years is in some cases you'll have legitimate call centers abroad that have personnel that work there that get flipped by bad actors, and they can use that to access your information. Also, we've seen instances where, again, legitimate call centers train people to work there, and then those people end up going to work for non-legitimate robocall operations overseas. So there's lots of issues that come with being connected to offshore call centers. So we're launching an effort to try to onshore more of these call centers. And our jurisdiction at the FCC is limited to the entities that we regulate, so that's what we're looking at. But there may be other issues where the ADA, for instance, may give us some authority to look beyond narrowly at telecom. But I think it's a good issue where we need to get these call centers back to this country. I think it's a better customer experience. I think it's going to result in increased security as well. And there's a lot of companies that do it already. So, for instance, Charter Cable Company already has either all or mostly all U.S.-based call centers, and some of your members do that as well. And when they merged with another company that didn't have U.S.-based call centers, they agreed in the context of the FCC's merger review to onshore those call centers. And so we have a proceeding looking directly at the entities we regulate, but just as a general matter, we welcome people to discuss where their call centers are and to provide that level of transparency to customers. So maybe customers can choose. I could go with this business and it has a lot of U.S. call centers, and so if I have an issue, I know I can get somebody. Or if a business that doesn't disclose that, consumers have more choice that way.
And we appreciate that you've given us an opportunity to think it through and also to comment in the proceeding and give you some thoughts on what we know, what we understand, and what ways we might be able to advance that goal, and look forward to doing that.
Good.
Let's begin the looking ahead portion of our conversation. Casting our eyes out a little bit into the future, one of the things that I've been noticing has been a few really interesting conversations that are taking place on Capitol Hill about whether, now that we are 30 years in on the Telecom Act of 1996, that it might be time to press a reset button, begin to do some hard thinking about whether there is a pathway to updating and rethinking some of the assumptions that were baked into that original legislation. Do you think that there is a need or potentially an opportunity to do that thinking?
I think it can be really helpful when Congress steps in and updates old legislation like the 1996 Telecom Act. One of the things that the Telecom Act did was it really tried to break down monopoly silos and get to what we refer to as convergence and real competition. And it took a long time to get there, but I think we're now finally seeing a lot of that converged competition that was hoped for in the 96 Act. I mean, you've got traditionally mobile wireless players that are taking the largest share of in-home broadband market, an area where typically cable dominated. At the same time, you've got cable providers that are now offering traditional mobile wireless service plans and are taking big shares of new subscribers there as well. We've got this new generation of low Earth orbit satellites that are out there. Starlink has a lot. Amazon has some. We're hoping they get some more up there soon. But those services are continuing to mature as well. And one of the things that President Trump has been clear about is he wants the U.S. to lead the world again in technology and connectivity. One place that you see that is in this new technology called direct-to-cell, where you can go straight from a low Earth orbit satellite right to your smartphone. So you don't need, a dish nearby. So wherever you are, you're going to have, universal global connectivity, and it can be a complement to what we have as a terrestrial network. And we're setting up the country to lead in that area. So there's one satellite provider that's selling a big chunk of spectrum to Starlink that they can use for direct-to-cell. You saw Amazon just announce a deal to purchase spectrum that they hope to be able to use to offer direct to sell. And so I think we're going to see a market emerge there where you have multiple, effectively facilities-based providers offering direct to sell. So the U.S. is going to lead the world there as well. And it's part of a broader story of real converged competition. I mean, you guys are out there competing hammer and tong, and the data tells the story. You know, prices, I think there was a Phoenix Center study out that said prices for broadband is down, I think, 7 to 9% over the last year or so. On the mobile wireless side as well, we're seeing prices down, I think, 6 to 7%. And so prices are coming down. It's just an evidence of we're really seeing a lot of good competition. Maybe the board of directors of a lot of your businesses maybe think it's too frothy, too competitive, but it is driving prices down right now.
And a part of that analysis was our data that we presented through our broadband pricing index was complementary to the conclusions that were made about those pricing trends. And also, I think one of the hallmarks of at least the statutory operating system that was created by the Telecom Act 30 years ago was this idea that we need to stoke competition, but to do so with limited government intervention using a light touch approach. And we are all in with not only your perspective, but the broader, to the extent that it can be bipartisan perspective, to move using that operating principle of taking a light touch perspective as we evolve new statutes and new ways of thinking about regulation.
Yeah, and one of the other promises, obviously, from the 96 Act was universal service, and the Universal Service Fund. And again, most people may not know this outside this room, but there's a roughly $9 billion a year fund called the Universal Service Fund, and it does a lot of things. A big chunk of it is in a program that we call high cost, and it's designed to subsidize the build out of internet services in really rural and sparsely populated parts of the country. There's a portion of it for subsidizing connectivity for schools and libraries. There's a healthcare component, and there's a low-income component. One of the things that we're doing right now at the FCC is we're going through each one of those universal service programs and doing a top-to-bottom review. And so you also talk about the future. That'll be a piece of our future. So up to now, you've seen some efforts on Lifeline, which is the low-income subsidy program. We've been working hard on waste, fraud, and abuse there. We can talk a bit about that. We're taking one step this month on the E-rate program, and I think soon you'll see us taking a broader top-to-bottom look at the E-rate program as well, and we're going to look at the high-cost program as well. I mean, these programs are going to all continue to exist. They've been authorized by Congress, and we want to make sure that they're fit for purpose for today. And so we're going to be open-minded on all those programs and taking input on them.
Yeah, and we are going to be glad to provide that input. We looking forward to working with you and your team in advancing smart reform around that, and particularly, as you mentioned, around the high-cost program, which has been such an indispensable part of how particularly our rural-facing providers have been able to deliver connectivity.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. Again, looking ahead, so much on your plate right now, but as you look a year ahead, a year and a half ahead, are there any waypoints that you are looking at wanting to accomplish beyond what's on the agenda now? Anything that we need to begin to think about as you're planning your next phases of your chairmanship?
Yeah, you know, the first year we've really sort of laid out a big outlines of the agenda. Build America. It's getting more spectrum out there. It's the permitting reform, which we've started that process. We're going to get that to the finish line here soon. The space economy, we're really working hard to go faster there. National security, we stood up a new council on national security within the FCC. We're working hard on cybersecurity issues. We've changed our approach there a little bit, where we're working directly with the companies that are the targets of these cybersecurity attacks. We're making sure they're connected with all the components of the federal government that are expert here, from DHS to CISA to other portions of the federal apparatus. And we're just going to continue to execute on that agenda. I think the copper retirement issue, as we continue to finalize that, is going to continue to pay dividends. So we've laid the broad brushstrokes out there, and now we just have to continue to grind away. And
we're going to be partners and friends as we do so, and really look forward to continuing that work. Thank you. Really appreciate your spending some time with us this afternoon.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought that he really had a lot of very, very interesting, insightful, and hopeful things to share with our community of broadband providers. And we've got a lot of work to do ahead, and really looking forward to do it. And I think it would be a great opportunity to actually have a moment to hear from some of our colleagues who are actually doing that important work. We're moving from the policy discussion to the reality of actually delivering broadband, with a discussion from the front lines of broadband deployment. What's working? What can be improved? How can the people like Chairman Carr and others on Capitol Hill and across the administration and in the state houses, the folks who write the rules, how can they better keep up with the innovation that we're seeing and the momentum that we're seeing from the people who are seeking to build the networks to connect us all? And to lead that discussion, I would like to invite another chairman, our chairman, USTelecom Chairman Jeff England from Silver Star Communications, to bring up the next panel. So thank you very much. Jeff? Thank you.
Thank you. Right, well, good afternoon, everyone. It really is a great privilege and an honor to be here with a group of CEOs that I respect as innovators in our industry, and in fact, I even call them my friends, and so we're really grateful to be here. As Jonathan had mentioned, my name is Jeff England. I'm the Vice President and CFO of Silver Star Communications, and also have the current honor of being the chair of the board of directors at USTelecom. I'm joined by Todd Foji, CEO of Great Plains Communications, Gaurav Junea, CEO of Fidium, Jennifer Pratho, CEO of Totelcom, and Harold Zeitz, CEO of Ziply Fiber. For a long time, our industry has been focusing on building. It's expanding networks, upgrading infrastructure, getting to more communities, and I would say that that's still a major effort that's going on in our industry right now. But the conversation is starting to shift. It's really now about what we're building toward, what connectivity actually offers and enables for the people and the communities that we serve. And that's where some leadership and policy, those things really matter. The decisions made at the federal, state, and local level directly impact how fast and how effectively we can deliver. When the policy environment works, progress follows. When it doesn't, it shows up pretty quickly on the ground. So I'm looking forward to hearing from this group and how they're thinking about the future and what our customers are going to need next, and what it's going to take both from an industry and policy makers to get there. So with that, maybe let's just jump right in. Really appreciated the discussion that Jonathan Spalter and Chairman Carr had. It was really good to get some perspectives from the chairman. And I guess maybe a great way to start is to just kind of go down the line. Harold, maybe we could start with you. And just I'm curious if there were any key takeaways that you gathered from that conversation.
Yeah, maybe a little controversial statement, but it's great to see such a progressive point of view, because when I think of progressive, I think of the progress of bringing in new networks, and with Chairman Carr, he has such a perspective on what's needed to progress into the future. And so, it wasn't unusual to see those photos of him out, in West Texas, because he spends a lot of his time trying to learn from what's really happening. And it's just so terrific to see that. And so I think that what we're seeing now from the regulatory front is a point of view that's informed and trying to make decisions and put forth things that help with that ultimate goal of just getting new networks, new capability to everyone. So it's just great to see that.
Yeah, thank you. Gaurav?
Yeah, I think there were two things that really resonated. One is network modernization. Fiber, which is at Fidium Fiber, it's a very capital-intensive business. It takes a long time to get a return, but then when you have the overhang of a copper network and not being able to decommission that, it impedes on your ability to build more fiber. So point being, is it really nice to see the network modernization stance. The second piece that I felt was very compelling was about call centers. And the reason I say that is because of AI. I actually think that with AI, it is a great opportunity not just to bring call centers onshore, but to actually reinvent the whole call center experience. Because with AI, when I think about AI, it's really threefold. A is productivity benefits. B is you have coding and development benefits, which really are more technology and IT focused. But then the third piece is agentic. It's the whole agentic experience in the call center that I think not only can we bring it onshore, but with AI, you can really digitize the experience a whole lot more.
Yeah, thank you. Todd?
Well, I was glad, Jeff, to see that Chairman Carr is getting fiber splicing skills, because we're awful busy and we like to have
I know, right?
We can always use some extra help. But on a serious note, certainly the encouragement of a policymaker in such a prestigious role as being FCC chair that wants to help all of us build America is refreshing. The fact that the role of the commission is going to be involvement and oversight where appropriate, but not in a way that's intrusive or slows us down, and that the administration wants us to continue to deploy capital, build networks, and create infrastructure that we all benefit from. I think the tone around that, we've always found Chairman Carr to be a great partner as a policymaker. His staff's always willing to take meetings, listen. It's appreciated that we're heard and that we have input and a good partnership.
Yeah, thank you. Jennifer?
Yeah, similarly, I think across all these topics, I hear a commission that wants to get some things done and rather quickly, which just means that we need a renewed commitment to staying involved. And I think they are open to hear how some of those things will affect on the ground in the real world of building broadband, particularly rural broadband. So we just need to stay focused on that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all of those perspectives. I think I gathered some of the same thoughts. It's encouraging to me, I think, as a fiber provider to know that really the communications ecosystem is broad, and that there's a vital and important role that fiber plays, even to the extent of supporting technologies that are expanding that connectivity. So with the next couple of minutes, I thought maybe we could just bounce around to some individuals. I got some pointed questions. And Gaurav, maybe I'll start with you, just because I want to first extend congratulations to you on your new role as the CEO of Fidium. So we're grateful to have you here to be with us today.
Thank you.
But I'd just point out, I guess, maybe Fidium has been rapidly expanding fiber across both suburban and traditionally underserved areas. And I'm curious, from your perspective, with the time that you've had in your seat, where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth for Fidium? And what are you most optimistic about in your first year as the CEO there?
Thank you. I've been in the seat for 3 months now, and Bob Udell, who's here in the room, obviously prepared me well. Two things, really. When I think about, Fidium is a purpose-driven organization, and we provide fiber connectivity and infrastructure to unserved and underserved communities in America. And we do that at scale. So we will have 2 million fiber passes across the country by the end of 2027. That is really our biggest opportunity, which is how can we continue to accelerate our fiber build and growth. We've obviously leveraged private capital. We've obviously gotten subsidy from the states, and the state broadband offices have been very helpful. Now we're going to leverage BEAD. So that is really a big opportunity for us to continue to serve unserved and underserved America with fiber connectivity, not just for consumers, but for businesses and for data centers and for the communities in general. First opportunity for us. The second opportunity that I believe at Fidium, which is untapped today, but is a big opportunity for us over the next 18 months, is what I talked about with AI. We want to, or at least aspirationally, want to reinvent the entire customer experience with AI, which is, everything from our network, which is really our backbone. How can we really make sure that we can proactively monitor the network? And if the network is degraded in some way, shape, or form, we can proactively leverage AI, inform the customer, and really make sure that we can proactively monitor the network and fix it. So that's just one example. The other example is what I talked about with the call center. I actually want to be in a position where our customers don't need to speak to somebody in our call center. They can call, a phone number, speak to the IVR. The IVR can then recognize why the customer is calling Did they receive a bill, and are they inquiring about their bill? And can the AI chatbot then walk them through their bill? Or are they calling because they had a service call yesterday and they want to talk about their service call? So we want to be able to leverage AI to dramatically reshape the customer experience.
You know, that's fascinating. As one who lives in a very rural community, I'm fairly dependent on like Amazon for delivery of services to my home. And the interaction that I have with them already is highly AI driven. And this is maybe one of the competitors in our footprint. And they've already got some of that infrastructure in place to support it.
Yeah.
And so it creates an environment, I think, like you said, to get there and to be ready for it, to increase that experience through the utilization of technology.
Yeah. It's a scary thought. I mean, AI in general, I think, can be very scary, including for us at times. And we're trying to lean in and figure out, and really that's why we're starting with the customer experience, because
Right.
we believe ultimately we're trying to satisfy all our customers. And how can we leverage AI to do that first, before we really focus on operational efficiency?
Thank you. Well, I'm really curious to see where that goes, and maybe we could have you come back and tell us a report. Todd, maybe turn it over to you. I'm curious, from your perspective, what's the most significant change that you've seen in your service footprint over the past 3 to 5 years? And what emerging technology, service, or applications do you think will most dramatically reshape demand for your network in the coming years?
Wow, that's a big question, Jeff. I appreciate it. Well, certainly one of the biggest changes, and it's a continuous change, is just this insatiable demand for bandwidth by users of all types. You know, during COVID, we saw spikes in network utilization. I think a lot of us thought that those would perhaps moderate, and they haven't. There continues to be, tremendous demand in the network. In terms of opportunities, certainly, as Gorham just pointed out, and the opportunities to enhance customer service. I think about AI in our business is maybe not being as much focused on cost savings, but focused on how do we improve, how do we even get better, how can we make that customer experience better, as an area of emphasis and opportunity. Another area of opportunity, I think, internal, Jeff, that we should all thinking about, and this Chairman Carr touched on this a moment ago, broadband pricing, broadband rates to consumers are declining, but our supply chain costs are going up. Labor costs haven't moderated at all in our businesses. Cost of capital has gone up significantly in the last few years. So when you think about those kind of competing pressures in our own organizations, we need to find ways to be more efficient providers of service so that we can continue to get the end users, the consumers, what they want at the prices that they want. And I think that pressure is even going to be amplified. It's an opportunity too, which is why I'm touching on it now, but it's even going to be amplified because almost everywhere you read, they say that the consumer is feeling the pressure of more expensive groceries and now more expensive gasoline. We hope those things are temporary, but we're not sure about that, right? And so they need broadband to do all the things that they do with our networks, whether it's in their businesses or in their homes or in their schools or their hospitals. And so I think continuing to make sure that we're being as effective as we can in providing the service and doing it efficiently so we can meet those needs is an area of opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. It is sort of a weird environment. I mean, you mentioned the increased costs on the supplies. That's even assuming you can get them in the first place. And we do sort of live in a weird environment where it's almost easier to gain capital than it is to gain the resources, the materials that you need to do the projects. So thank you for that perspective. Harold, I'll maybe turn to you now. As you look at at the evolving business and technology environment, and market structure, how are those factors shaping your strategy for today?
Well, it's interesting. Gaurav mentions AI as one thing. I think there's something super scary about AI is we're all critical infrastructure, and we have to think about protecting that critical infrastructure. And the battle is going to get 10 times more, maybe 100 times more complicated. So I do think about that and think about all the things we have to do to protect our critical infrastructure. And that's something we're spending a lot more time on than we had 5 years ago, certainly. I guess I have another thought is that if we all become sort of the same, we use AI in exactly the same way, that we're just become sort of generic. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. We have a very different point of view. We're not trying to do any of the things that Gaurav's trying to do. We're trying to make it so customers don't need to contact us in any way. And that's what our focus is, and we think that's a differentiated way of approaching it. I don't know that people really want to talk to an IVR and then chat, so I think people don't want to do that. We just want to make it so they never have to. So our main focus is on making it so that customers never have to contact us. It sounds like, well, that's impossible, but we've gotten a lot closer than we ever thought we would from a few years ago. So I think we're all going to have to take different approaches, and the technology, as you mentioned, what's changed, the technology is so different that we have tools that we didn't have years ago. But those are kind of two areas I think about, is the effort we're going to have to put forward on protecting the critical infrastructure, and how do we make differentiated experiences for customers.
I really appreciate the perspective that you shared there, because I'm sure you're finding the same research that we are. It's not a matter, it's in a way, if we sort of look at how we've always delivered, it feels like it's maybe a less than customer experience. And yet all the surveys say this is how our customers want to interact with us.
Right.
Is they want to be able, it needs to be self-driven, get the connectivity, and just be able to move on. And so I love where you're going with that.
And customers really don't want to contact you at all, but if they do, they want to contact it to get your service, and then after that, they never want to contact you ever again. And so we're just trying to get to, as close as we can to that.
And it is the best experience to not ever give them a reason to, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Jennifer, maybe moving down to you, when we look back 10 years from now, I'm curious from your perspective, what will have been the single most transformative change in how your community is connected? And do you have that crystal ball that kind of tells you maybe what's most transformative here at our time for the next 10 years?
Jeff, if I had that crystal ball, I don't think I'd be here, because I would be using it for other purposes.
Okay.
But with that being said, I think when I think about the communities that we serve at Totelecom, and then the communities like ours who maybe are not lucky enough to have Totelecom service, I think what's going to be most transformational 10 years from now is, are they still truly connected? I have a lot of concern about what I'm seeing with some of the changes made to BEAD. I think you have a lot of communities that, while covered by BEAD, maybe are not going to get access to more than what they already have today. And so what does that mean 10 years from now? Do we still have a commitment to ensure that they have robust, scalable broadband available then? We're going to have a lot of technology advances between now and then. And so are we going to be able to handle it? And what does that mean for the communities that I serve? It means we already are seeing a loss in the physical healthcare structure. We have a lot of rural healthcare clinics closing. We are losing some of our educational facilities. If we also lose the ability to connect to those with technology, then that's a real emergency for a community. That's unsustainable. But then, even on a more positive note than that, if you have rural areas that are unconnected, you are losing a hub of innovation. And what I mean by that is that rural areas can be a real wonderful place to try out new technologies. Our company's had a history of that and some mobile things back before I came around. But when you have low density and when you have low traffic, that's a really good place to test new innovations.
Yeah.
And specifically in the areas that we serve, we do a lot of ag production, a lot of energy production. We're seeing huge increases in some of their efficiencies that they can gain, but they can only do it if they have robust connectivity. And so whenever you have things like that, industries like that see big increases in innovation and in efficiency, that helps everyone, not just our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think any one of us here could probably recognize that those are some opportunities that exist within the industry and the impact that we can have on the communities. So really appreciate that. All right, so thank you for sort of these individual spotlights. I'll maybe go back to some general questions, and so whoever wants to jump in with your perspective, I would love it. The first question is around this policy landscape. And just so you know, I've got another question around permitting. So if there's some other policy things you'd like to discuss, this is maybe a good chance. Or if you want to talk about permitting, that's okay too. But we heard from Chairman Carr and some of his perspectives. And I'm just curious from you all, what do policymakers need to understand about our businesses, and how can the right policy framework help make sure that we can all deploy, compete, and deliver the services for our customers that they need? So anybody want to jump in with that one? Yeah,
Sure.
Go ahead, Harold.
I think it's best when policymakers focus on things that are imperfections in the market, and not things that are, someone's desire or something. So of all the things that Chairman Carr talked about, the one that I think makes no sense to me is the customer care one. Because if I provide a great service and I'm doing that by using, whatever means I'm using, and customers love it, then hallelujah. And if customers don't love it, they'll go somewhere else. that doesn't seem like something that makes sense for regulatory body to get focused on. I think things that are enablers or imperfections in the market are the best place for them to focus. And so, copper replacement, permitting reform, God forbid, something for pole owners too. Things that are enablers or imperfections in the market is where I think they should spend the most time.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what I heard you say with sort of the is you can almost regulate it to the point that it eliminates our ability to compete through differentiation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is an interesting perspective. Thank you. Any others?
I think some of the things that are important for policymakers to keep in mind, Jeff, would be that we like sustainability and predictability in those relationships and the different programs and resources where we can blend public capital with private capital and accomplish common goals that are good for consumers and taxpayers. So the predictability piece of it's important, and kind of the reliability around it, but also just not losing sight of the recognition that we're in a very capital intensive business. We're making very long-term investments, and that's why those things are important. And we talk about universal service, not underline the word service. It's just not universal construction of infrastructure, but it needs to be cared for and fed over time through maintenance and upgrades and things like that. So there's an operating aspect to what we do that also needs to be kind of front of mind for policymakers as they think about these programs and the next steps they take to evolve them to meet the needs of everyone.
Thank you. I feel like you see me. Thank you for that. Anything else?
I think the two things, the permitting thing, I think, having been an overbuilder in my past, and now, being here at Fidium, predictability of speed to build and cost to build is incredibly important for reasons that we've talked about. I felt that my past life at Metronet, we did not have that.
Okay.
Permitting was one of the reasons. And through brute force, through going and expanding your TAM, we got some of that predictability. But on a market-by-market basis, you really didn't have that predictability. And the ultimate loser is the consumer when you don't have that predictability. And of course, when we as the operator don't have the predictability on cost, we're the loser too. But really, the bigger loser is the customer because they don't get that. They don't get the benefits of the infrastructure and the experience. So that's one. The second thing I would say is fully agree with Todd over here is our costs are going up. Whether it's fuel, now it's fuel. For all our fleet, it's inventory and CPE. Everything, the cost of everything is going up, the cost of labor, as we talked about earlier. So the predictability on policy is really important for us so we can plan longer term. The call center, like Harold spoke about, I was using the angle of AI to really kind of not talk about the call center issue, but it is an issue because, there is some labor arbitrage to offset some of our costs when we use a good outsourced call center overseas. When we have to make those changes, those dramatic shifts, in kind of our labor pool, it changes the business model for us dramatically. And then that, again, based on the flywheel of growth, we then can't invest into our build as much as we used to, as an example. So it ends up hurting the consumer again.
Yeah, thank you. Jennifer, do you have anything you want to add?
I feel like these guys covered it. Todd really spoke to me too.
Yeah.
Just that long-term predictability and sustainability, that this is a really good business to be in. So to Harold's point, those pain points are really where they need to focus. The rest of it works very well.
Yeah. All right. So let's maybe talk permitting then. Before we got together with this group, I kind of was speaking with each of you a little bit about it, and it's fascinating to me the diversity. We all have permitting challenges, but they're very diverse, and so I'm just wondering, have you seen any jurisdictions maybe that you feel like that get it right, or is there something from your perspective that could be done? Low-hanging fruit to address maybe some of the permitting challenges. I don't want this to necessarily get into the horror story, let's all vent, even though we could do that. I'm just curious what you see as maybe areas to focus on for some permitting.
I think that, for the most part, I don't see permitting as a big problem. For the most part, we build a lot in towns, and sure, they have some rules, but there's some predictability in how things come out. It's now that we're past 50%, where maybe it's 70% to build out, that we're getting to places where it's there are impediments. I think the biggest impediment, if we talked earlier, right now, is that we have towns that don't have fiber that think it's a wise idea to add a gross receipts tax or a per lineal foot tax, which we think is not permissible, but you're either going to build there or you're not. But it's a variable cost that goes on forever with the business, and they're a lot. They're like 7% or something. We're seeing that heavily in some areas, and we're starting to see it in other areas of the country. So it's spreading, not getting smaller. But I think for the most part, you hand a permit in, you know the rules, it'll take a little while, okay, fine. But it's the franchise fees that are really taxes are new and dramatic. They're not like small numbers. And then power companies that are just, have a moving set of goal sets and super high costs and no real authority to make them do something. Those are probably the two biggest areas from our perspective that are slowing down fiber.
Yeah, thank you. Any others?
I guess in order to not delve into just the hate talk on permitting, one thing that I've seen across all the jurisdictions is we see a real lack of workforce to be able to deal with it still. I think we all knew that was coming. You'd have these jurisdictions that were going to see a huge influx of permitting requests and they can't handle it. In the electric make-ready space, we see engineering firms consolidate, and that creates problems as far as then you're further back in the line and nobody knows what's going on. And we have several things outstanding, even with USDA, that we think there's just not enough people to process them. And I have not seen that getting any better.
Yeah, thank you. Any others?
Well, I mean, fortunately for us, and again, I hate to say this, but fortunately for us, where the ILEC and most of our fiber build is happening in New England, where we have unencumbered access to our poles. So therefore, it has not been a big challenge for us so far. As we start edging out and expanding, we'll probably gain some experience.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Todd, or are you good? Okay. Well, then I'm going to maybe take opportunity to represent all of our western states where this becomes a really big issue for us. And I appreciate what you're saying, Harold, in the sense that, like, if I have a privately invested project that I'm looking ahead as a CFO, I can plan and understand that maybe my permitting process for a project is 2 years, and I can work around that, and I can schedule when I need to get capital lined up for my project once I get the permitting complete. And while it's an inconvenience and maybe there's a missed opportunity, it's not like a game changer or a deal breaker, if you will. But I would just propose that I think one of the problems that we have in the permitting environment at the federal level is, as more and more federal programs move to grant-based programs where it has a hard start date with a hard end date, the start date, I can't incur any of the costs before that start date. And at the end date, if I don't deliver it on time, then I actually have some severe penalties. And so I'm faced in situations in my service area where it literally can take 2 years to get a permit. In Wyoming, I have snow on the ground for 6 months out of the year, which means that for the remaining 3 years, I'm only getting about 1.5 years to get the project done. Now, in Wyoming, we still roll up our sleeves and we get it done. And we're not, our attitude is not one to come back to the federal government and ask for more money, but I might have to ask for some bail money in order to get this thing done. And so I think it's just a situation where the feds need to be aware, and they're our customer in this case. It's just a weird situation to have a customer want you to pay or to build a project or a service and then make it really hard for you to do it by squeezing on both bookends. And so I thought I'd just maybe throw that out.
Well, you bring up a key point, is the time-bound nature.
Yes.
That you're under.
Without the time-bound, I think it's a different discussion. Yeah. But with the time-bound, I think it becomes significant.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, this has been a fascinating discussion. I'd love to keep this going longer, but I think in the interest of time, maybe what we could do here, I've got one question, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do you all a service, because we got a number of people that are here. I'm going to ask the question, try to reduce your answers to like the 3 to 5 words so that it's a thought primer, so that anybody here can follow up with you and ask you what you mean by this. So what keeps you up at night when you think about the next 3 to 5 years of the connectivity and the challenges that we have across our country for connectivity?
Well, I'm definitely kept up at night by critical infrastructure threats, technology. It's something that's beyond my comprehension and something that makes me nervous. I definitely am. And then it's just the I think the the towns and power companies that have a changing set of rules are definitely challenging. Even a set of rules that I don't like, but were consistent, and the same would make it better. And I also think about how we're going to differentiate ourselves in an agentic world where everyone has the potential to be the same. And those are probably the three things.
Yeah, thank you.
For me and for us at Fidium, it's how can we be on the radar, top of mind, with the state broadband offices and with the administration for large-scale projects, i.e. BEAD, i.e. hospitals, schools, and things that have to be developed. What I'm seeing, at least in our markets, including BEAD, is some of the much smaller operators or operators that are subscale or are new to the business are being awarded or getting these awards, which I don't think is going to materialize and has already not materialized. So how can we leverage, how can we all leverage operators at scale to grow the economy by giving us the projects because we have a proven track record? That's what keeps me up at night.
Thank you. Todd?
Well, if we didn't have this, what would keep me up at night would be this notion of having great people in our businesses. Because a lot of the things we're talking about are external, and we can comment on them, and we can try to influence them, but a lot of them we're not going to control or maybe even change much in some cases, Jeff. So we have to react to those things, and we have to see opportunities in them, but those opportunities are going to be capitalized by having great people. And so that's really what, I'm blessed with that today in our company, but that's what I think about and focus on as I look at the future. All these different technologies and changes are all going to come back having great minds and great minds working together to see opportunities and take great care of customers.
Thank you. Jennifer?
What keeps me up is uncertainty and versus the need for service.
Okay, great. And I think with that, one of the things that maybe keeps me up at night is how do we take all of these things that we're also concerned about as providers and in the best interest in our hearts of meeting the needs of the customers, and make sure that policymakers and lawmakers are able to effectively hear and understand what those concerns are. And with that, as I'm grateful for a forum that exists like this and for the Association of USTelecom who can help sort of carry that weight for us, and just for the stage that we've been able to have today to be able to discuss this with all of you. So with that, thank you for your participation, and just appreciate you all being here. So if you'll just join with me in giving a round of applause. And Jonathan, we'll turn it back to you. Yeah.
No, just to echo what Chairman England said, we are all very grateful to all of those women and men around the country who are putting their shoulders to building our communications networks, to making the massive investments in doing so, and to the resiliency. We're really grateful as well to our government partners here in Washington and around the country who stand with us to lean in to make that work possible. We've got more work to do, and we're grateful that we can come together to figure out how we can advance America's connectivity. So to all of our USTelecom members who are here in the room, around the country, and to the many of you who have joined us today, thank you very much for joining. Good afternoon.